So, this is Criminal Justice Corner, where we discuss true crime stories. We give the real details surrounding what occurred. And just in case you find yourself in the same situation, we give you actionable advice and tips on how you can potentially get yourself out. I'm Dr. Jennifer Matthews, as you already know, the host of Criminal Justice Corner. I have 16 years of experience in the field of criminal justice and a doctoral degree in criminal justice. I'm also an expert in video evidence. Our Criminal Justice Corner sponsor today is Dr. Jennifer Matthews Consulting. Dr. Jennifer Matthews Consulting is a driving force behind digital transformations to solve cases quicker with body-worn cameras, closed-circuit television media, and expert witness testimony. You can find them on the web at drjennifermatthews.com. Today with me, I have a very special guest. She is a Bill Cosby rape survivor, Pj Masten. She is here to share her experiences with Bill Cosby today. PJ, can you give us just a little bit of background about yourself?
Sure. I'm one of five daughters. I'm the middle daughter of five of us, and I grew up right outside Manhattan. A year out of high school, I got married. You know all the answers at that age, but that marriage was terrible, and he was very abusive. So a year and a half later, I left, and I went back home to my family. And of course, I had no self-esteem. And my dad owned a moving company. And one day I was in the office, and the crew came in with a big box of Playboy magazines, and they said, "PJ, why don't you go up to Great Gorge Playboy Club and get a job as a bunny?" I said, "You've got to be kidding! I'm a medical and surgical assistant. I can't do that." And they said, "We'll bet you $100 and we'll go up there." So at that 1972, that was a nice piece of change. So they didn't say how to get the job, just go for the interview. So my mother talked me into it. She thought it'd be good for my self-esteem because I was so battered. And so my mom and dad drove me up there. They had lunch, and I went to see the bunny mother. That's what they called the director at the time. And she said, "Put a bathing suit on, take the braces off your teeth, lose 10 pounds, and start 2 weeks from Monday."
Wow.
And so I went upstairs and I ordered fried chicken and a hot fudge sundae because I had no intentions of staying up there. I was going to go back down to Marathon in the Keys where I was living. And that evening, a friend of mine from high school called me. She said, "PJ, I heard you were up here for an interview." I said, "Yeah, but I'm going back to Marathon." She said, "Do you realize how much money we're making up here?" I said, "No." 1972, she was making 30 hours a week between $700 and $1,000 cash.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot of money back
That's
then.
still a lot of money today.
Yeah, so I was stuck with a lot of bills from my ex-husband's school bills and all of that. And I decided to go up there. And it's 2 weeks of grueling training. It's really hard, but you become part of a sorority, and it's a wonderful experience being with all of the ladies.
So what does that training look like? What things do you have to do?
Well, you have to learn how to serve on 3-inch high heels and serve backwards. You have to learn every single cocktail that's ever been made and the call-in sequence. If you didn't get the call-in sequence right for the bartenders, because that's the way it was set up, they'd knock your tray down and you're in the back of the line. That means your customers would have to wait for you again. So it was tough. And in Great Gorge, the floors were made out of pebbles. So we had to walk around in 3-inch high heels on pebbles and serve backwards. It was a tough job.
Now,
Tough job.
what was the purpose of serving backwards? I don't understand that
They
part.
called it the bunny dip. You tucked your knee in, the bunny
Oh,
dip. Yeah, you tuck your knee in and you serve backwards because they didn't want cleavage to show. Although cleavage was showing, they didn't want you to lean
right.
forward.
Oh, okay. So they wanted you guys to be modest, is what you're saying.
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right.
But the costume gave off a whole different air.
Okay. So how long did it take you to get the job? Did you go apply and you got it, or how did that go?
Well, I got it, and I started 2 weeks after she hired me.
So
And
did
that's what,
you lose the weight?
yeah,
How did you
yeah,
do that?
running. I was a runner.
Okay. All right. So
So
you lost
I
exactly 10 pounds in
a
2 weeks?
little, almost. No, not quite, but almost.
Okay.
Almost.
And
He
they were
let me.
satisfied with that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was 5'7" with 3-inch high heels and 5-inch ears. I mean, I stood 6'4". I mean, I was something to be reckoned with when I came down the aisle, because I'm a big girl. So I mean, it was a fun experience, and I worked up there as a Playboy bunny, and I was coming down the service stairs, and somebody threw fruit down there, and I tripped, and I went all the way down the concrete stairs, and I broke my back.
Oh my.
Yeah, so I had 4 back operations and 2 spinal fusions, and certainly I couldn't put the costume back on because I couldn't bend over backwards. So there was an opening in the New York City Club as an assistant bunny mother. So I was
Okay.
hired for that, and I went into management, and I worked there. And now getting into Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby was on the comedy circuit for Playboy. He was one of Hefner's best friends. So every club that I worked in, he was always there. Hey, PJ, how you doing? And we were friendly. And I saw him again in New York. And then about a year and a half after New York, I was transferred to Century City, to 2020 Avenue of the Stars in Hollywood, to the
Okay.
big club where Hefner lived. And of course, Bill was there all the time. Go up to the mansion, Cosby there all the time. And I worked there. And then I was asked to go to Chicago for 6 weeks because they needed a fill-in bunny mother, because they needed to find a replacement. So I
Okay.
went up there for what I thought would be 6 weeks. But all the corporate executives said, if you want to move up in the company, you're in corporate headquarters. This is where you want to be, at corporate headquarters. So I decided to take the job in Chicago in the
So
headquarters.
corporate was in Chicago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah. And what would you like to ask me about?
Oh, okay. So you were working in Chicago, and when did Bill Cosby and you meet in Chicago?
It's April of '77. He was in the Playmate Lounge doing an interview for Maggie Daly, who was a columnist, a social columnist for the Tribune at the time. And he was always fun, and he was always laughing, and he had all of the customers laughing. And I was seating the room at the time. So after he got done with his interview, he asked me if I had lunch, and I said, no, I didn't. So he said, well, come around the corner and we'll go to Bank One on a Bun. It was a little hot dog place around the corner. We went around the corner, and he jumped behind the counter, and he was flipping hamburgers and hot dogs, and
At this
everybody was
restaurant.
laughing at this little tiny hole in the wall. And
Okay.
so I got something to eat, and I said, I got to go back to work. So I went back to work. Later that evening, I got a phone call in the office from him saying, PJ, do you want to go out to dinner tomorrow night? And I said, sure, no problem, Cos. Again, I knew the guy for 6 years.
Okay.
He was not a stranger. So he says, all right. So he called me the following day. He says, listen, meet me at the Whitehall Hotel up in the penthouse. He said, meet me at the Whitehall Hotel. And back in those days, Dr. Matthews, you had to call up from the lobby to find out what room somebody was in. So he says, I'm up in the penthouse. Come on up. We'll have a drink before we go out to dinner.
Okay.
So not thinking anything, I went upstairs. And I knocked on the door, and Cosby was there, and there were 4 men there, and they were drinking liquor and smoking cigars and watching sports on TV.
Now, did you know these men?
I know 2 of them.
Okay. So you weren't nervous at this time or anything. You weren't uncomfortable.
They wouldn't talk to me. Not one of them would acknowledge me. They just turned their head and watched the TV. They knew what was coming. They knew what was coming.
But even the 2 men that you knew, they didn't say anything either.
Not a word. They completely ignored me. Okay. So Cosby says, what would you like to drink? Now, I wasn't much of a drinker, so I said, I'll have a Grand Marnier. He had a whole bar set up behind him.
Okay.
But he didn't have Grand Marnier. So he said, he called the bellman. Bellman came up. He handed him $100 bill. And he said, go around the corner and get me a bottle of Grand Marnier. Now, afterthought, why didn't he just call room service and have a bottle brought up?
That's true.
He had a whole bar there. So the young fella, the bellman came back with the bottle.
Okay.
And he says, PJ, do you want it on the rocks or do you want it straight up? I says, I'll take it on the rocks.
Now, was it sealed? Did you see it
It,
was it sealed?
he was behind me. So
Okay.
I didn't see anything. And he handed it to me and literally took 2 sips. And it's the last thing I remember until 4 o'clock the following morning. And I woke up in bed and I looked to my left and there he was naked. And I'm naked. I slivered out of the bed not to disturb him. I didn't want to wake him. And there was blood coming down my legs. And I gathered my clothing and I put on whatever I could. What Cosby did to a lot of the survivors was he sodomized us. That's why I was bleeding and it was dripping down my leg. So I got out of the suite and I went down the hallway and the blood is still dripping down my leg. And I got out in front and I got in a cab. This was at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
Got in a cab and went to my apartment on Dearborn Street, jumped in the shower, and I screamed for 2 hours.
Now, just before you go further, now you told me there was a reason why he sodomizes his victims.
He didn't want to get them pregnant. He did get one pregnant, who is his daughter Autumn, who he later sued in Philadelphia, the mother and the daughter. That goes back 30 years. And he had her sent to jail because she wanted his last name. Yeah, it's in the history books.
Okay.
It's in the history books.
So I guess he learned from that situation to do it allegedly that way.
Well, there's 68 of us that came out, and many of us had the same experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I had to go to work and get the girls on the floor. So I put my clothes on and I went to work. I was a mess. I got the girls on the floor and the phone rings and it's Cosby.
At the
in my office.
In your office.
The private number. Yeah.
The next day.
That morning.
That morning.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he said, why did you leave? Why did you leave? And I'm like, why did I leave? Are you kidding? I couldn't believe it. So I said, listen, I can't talk now. I have to get the girls on the floor. I have to go. And I hung up the phone.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And he called back about 11 o'clock and he said, listen, I have something being delivered for you. And I just hung up the phone. And about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a florist guy shows up, delivery guy, and he has a 4-foot ficus tree. And he said, this is for you, PJ. And I still have the card. And the card says, take charge of yourself, be healthy, Bill Cosby. And then he called me and he said, did you get the tree? And I said, yes, I did. Thank you. He says, well, and he went into this whole rendition of make sure you stick your finger in the soil to see if it needs water. I want you to turn that plant around every other day and clip the leaves. And he was going on. I said, listen, I have to go downstairs to the Playmate bar. I can't talk right now. So the next morning, I went to work and I called my boss.
So this is another day later.
This is the next day. Okay. I called my boss and I said, I have to speak to you. Mm-hmm. And she was in corporate. So she came down to my office and she said, what? And I told her what Bill Cosby, that he drugged me and he raped me.
Okay.
And she looked me straight in the face and she says, well, you know that is Cosby is Hefner's best friend. You know that, right? I said, he drugged me and he raped me. And she said to me, if you want to keep your job, I suggest you shut your mouth. And she walked out of the office.
Now, how did that make you feel in that moment?
It was like I was in suspended air. I couldn't talk. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't believe she said that to me. Don't offer me to go to a doctor. Don't offer cops. Don't offer therapy. Nothing.
And
nothing.
She's a woman.
And she's a woman.
And she's a woman. And you know what else that says to me? She's heard this before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. She was in charge of all of the girls in all of the Playboy clubs. So she's heard this before.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And she's heard about what went on up at the mansion. So as the days progressed, he kept calling. Why aren't you coming out with me? I want to take you out to dinner. And I said,
he's calling on the same phone.
Same on the private line. I don't know how he got that line. He got it from Hefner or Mary O'Connor or whoever.
Is Mary
And
O'Connor, that was the supervisor?
that was Mary O'Connor was Hefner's confidant
Okay.
in L.A.
Okay.
So I'm sure that that's how he got the number.
Now,
But
did she know? Did you tell her or?
no,
Okay.
no, no, I didn't tell her. I told my immediate boss,
Right. And
and I
that
was
was it
shut
at that
down.
time? Did you tell
I was.
anybody else?
I told my best friend that the night it happened. The
Okay.
next night it happened, I called him in Colorado and I told him what had happened. And so yeah, and they all verified it. The FBI verified it that I did speak with him and that this indeed did happen.
But you
So
never thought maybe to go to the police, or you were scared, or what did you think about
I
that?
didn't want to lose my job.
Mhm. It was a high paying job at that time.
Well, not really a high paying job, but I was working my way up the corporate ladder.
Okay.
I wanted to cooperate and work my way up. I mean, Christy Hefner became the president. I wanted to work my way up as a female.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So then the days progressed, and what happened?
And he kept calling and calling and calling. And finally I said, I'm not interested. Please stop calling. Then he would call again and again and again. Give me Bunny Marcia. Give me Bunny Amy. Give it. And
Oh,
I would take them. I said, I'll take a note and I'll give it to them. They can't use this phone. It's a private phone. And I'd write everything down and I'd throw everything out. I threw it all out. I wouldn't give it to the ladies.
so he calls himself moving on from you and on to other bunnies in the house, if you will.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He was at the mansion all the time. He had his own room at the Chicago mansion and at the LA mansion.
Now, did any of these women that he asked for, did they ever say to you that he did anything to them?
No,
Okay.
no, not at the time.
Right.
Afterwards, oh yeah, the floodgates opened up.
Okay, so you're saying like years later.
When Secrets of Playboy came out and I exposed it, yes, I got uh first of all, I got horrible, horrible text message, death threats. I had men sitting out in front of my house. That my internet was shut off just to shut me down because on the front of the New York Daily News, it had a picture of me
Hmm.
and it said, I know of 12 more bunnies that he raped.
Mm.
And
So
that
you
opened
didn't
the flood.
expose everything.
Yeah,
And
because
then
they
your
all
mom
called me. He did me too, PJ. He did me too. He got me too.
oh my.
And that was just the beginning of the 12. I mean,
Right.
68. Just recently, last month, another one came out.
I remember that. I
Yeah.
definitely remember that. So that makes it 69 at this point.
Yeah, but I have to tell you, there's more than 100. There's a lot of Jane Does. There's a
Oh,
lot of their grandmothers, their mothers. They don't want to open the floodgates. They
right.
don't want to think about this. I mean, it's traumatizing. What people don't understand is that when when a person is raped, any person is raped, whether you're drugged or not drugged, it
Hmm.
stays in your DNA. Your body retains that. Your
Okay.
mind can forget it for a while, but your body retains that. It's a DNA memory. And
Okay.
you're not only raping the body, you're raping that person's soul and their spirit. They are never the same after that. Never the same.
And you know what, PJ? That is something only a rape victim knows. Because I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
that. I
Yeah.
thank goodness I didn't know that. But
Thank
that
God.
is something that I didn't know. That is something that I didn't know. And it's good that you're speaking out because people need to understand that this affects people as a whole, and it affects them on a long-term basis, not just, for that few minutes, not just for that day, maybe not for just that week. It affects them on a long-term basis. So it's good that you're speaking out.
Well, when you think about it for a moment, um, the priests that sodomized and raped all of these young children,
Absolutely.
they don't have memory of it, but it shows up later in life. It
It does.
always shows up later in life,
It does.
whether they're violent or they're whatever happens, it comes out. You can't leave it, it's like a tumor
Hmm.
and it comes out.
Grows.
Yeah, and it grows, and it's revealed. Even with the Jerry Sandusky, look
Yeah.
at those young boys.
It does. They're
But
reliving it.
with the Jerry Sandusky case, it was held to a different account than the Bill Cosby case because we're females.
This is so true.
This is so true. Oh, poor Jerry Sandusky. What about all of these females? 100 of us at least.
Right.
So I'm an advocate for women's rights, and I fight for women, and that's what I'm here for. I want to change the statute of limitations. There's too many. It's ridiculous because there's no statute of limitations on rape. It's a
There's
life
not.
sentence. It's a life
Oh,
sentence
but there's a statute of limitations in the law now. So what is that?
in the law. Well, there's a couple of states that eliminated it. New York, California, they gave just recently in the last year or so, they gave the victims of sexual assault a year to come forward. And
Okay.
there's 12 Cosby survivors in New York that they're not only suing Bill Cosby, they're suing Silver Cup Studios,
Okay.
Carsey Warner, and they're suing the modeling agency that supplied all of these girls to Bill Cosby. LA has the same thing. You have a year to come forward. And just in the last 3 months, Nevada, a lot of these survivors of Bill Cosby fought, and they got it changed in Nevada.
So you want to change, you want the statute of limitations on rape to have no statute.
No expiration. No
expiration, right.
Right. No expiration.
That's
That's a
it.
life. That's a life
Exactly,
sentence.
for that victim.
Yep. So
Okay.
that's what I'm fighting for.
Okay. And then can you talk about the reputation of women after they come forward about when they allege rape? Like how the stigma of that.
Well, it's completely humiliating to get a rape kit. I've not had one, but I know many people that have,
Okay.
and you're there for hours. You're already traumatized and victimized, and you got cops standing around you, and therapists and doctors. I mean, it has to be done. I understand that, but it's right after it happens. It's really traumatizing. A lot of people shut down completely. Sometimes when I speak about it, and I do podcasts or interviews, it's what my therapist says, I go up in the ceiling. Now, when I was filming Secrets of Playboy, I have no recollection at all of filming it. None.
Really?
None. That's why I tuned in every week for 12 weeks to see what I said, because rape victims separate.
Okay.
Their conscious and their subconscious separate. And when the trauma is so bad, you go off into another world. Like I was on the ceiling. I don't remember any part of talking about being filmed,
Okay.
with the exception of a couple of things that were nice. But yeah, you separate. Definitely.
So now we know that he was charged. Were you ever asked to come forward and speak about that, like in court or anything?
Well, I've done a lot of speaking engagements, but when he went to court the first time with Andrea Constant, he was sentenced to prison, which is he spent 3 years or so, and then he had made a deal with the district attorney that he, in his deposition, he admitted to using quaaludes on the women.
Absolutely, I remember that.
Yep. And the DA made a deal. If you sign this, I won't prosecute you. So he was out in 3.5 years. So they went back again and to court, and they only chose three of the survivors to come forward. And I wasn't one of them, thank God, but 3 of them came forward. And it's just heartbreaking because some of these girls were 16, 17 years old.
Now, how did you feel about not being able to speak out in court? Were you okay with that? Did you want to do that?
I have no fear. I could look him straight in the eyes. I have no fear at all of him. No, not after what he did to me and so many others. And
Mhm.
the stories continue to come out
They
about him.
do.
And his Jello pudding pop commercials with little kids. All of this stuff comes out.
Yeah. Now, we know that he's married. Do you think his wife was aware of what was going on?
No question about it.
So you feel like she was an enabler?
She was an enabler. In fact, was a Beverly Johnson, I believe, was in New York, and she went to his townhouse, and Camille was there, and he made her a cappuccino, and Camille walked up. He made Beverly a cappuccino, and Camille walked upstairs and went to bed. And Beverly started getting a little woozy, and she ran out of the place.
Really?
Garcelle had the same thing. She sensed the same thing. Janice Dickinson. I mean, yes.
And
Camille knew she was in compliance.
she was around for these 3 women. When I'm
Yes,
saying when this happened for these 3 women.
yes, yes.
Now, of course, she's a woman, you're a woman. How does that make you feel knowing that she is complicit in this?
I don't understand it. I mean, she had 4 daughters. I don't understand it, but
Mhm,
it was a deal that they made. She went to school for her whole life, got all her degrees. She was a philanthropist with the Native American art, which is wonderful.
mhm,
But
mhm.
she just turned a blind eye. She knew. She knew.
Now, I guess I don't know what she would have to gain in doing that. You know what I mean? Like, n
Well, she was his manager. She controlled all the money.
okay, because 'cause I'm like, what is the motive? Like, everybody has to have something to gain in doing something like that. So,
She was his manager,
there we
and
go.
many times he was paid in cash at Playboy.
What are you gonna
Interesting. And that's the cash he used to wine and dine other women.
so she wouldn't have control of that.
Right,
He would have
right.
control of that. Okay, okay. Now, do you think Cosby is the same, better, or worse than Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein? How does he compare in your eyes?
I think they're all pretty much equal. They all had enablers. They all had people surrounding them.
Yep,
They all had private planes. They all knew what they were doing. They would they they're all predators. They're just
definitely.
sick sexual predators.
Mhm.
And 2 are gone. Weinstein will never get out of jail, and Cosby is suffering financially right now. Financially, and when these lawsuits come out in New York and L.A. and Nevada and whatever, his money is dwindling.
Yeah,
He was so powerful in Hollywood. He almost bought MGM Studios. That's how powerful he was.
yeah,
And all the people around him. His chauffeur disappeared that would pick up the girls and bring them to his townhouse. There's so many stories, and so many people that were enabling him. They knew what he was doing.
right. Now, we know that he's a free man now. How does that make you feel as a survivor?
Is he free? Is he free?
Right.
He can't go out in public. He's
Yeah.
shamed.
Yeah.
Even his own community. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people that still stand by him because everybody loved Dr. Huxtable. What kind
Yes.
of a doctor was Dr. Huxtable?
A medical doctor.
Gynecologist, obstetrician,
He was. He
and
sure
he was the executive producer, and he chose that position to be in.
he did.
All the hints were there. It was not a well kept secret in Hollywood.
I
I've talked
never
to so
put
many
2 and 2
people.
together like that.
Gynecologist, obstetrician.
Delivering babies.
Hmm.
Okay.
Vaginal exams.
Wow.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
deep.
that's very deep.
That's deep. Now, we know he was best friends with Hugh Hefner. So, of course, he had to know. What do you think of his complicitness in this? Hughes.
Hef.
Yes.
Oh, Cosby was there. Cosby had a longtime girlfriend up at the mansion, a
Mm.
longtime girlfriend, a white girl, and he would also bring up he would bring up other dates to the mansion. That's where he dated. That's where all those celebrities dated because they didn't have the fear of groupies around them.
Or the
And they could,
judgment.
or the judgment, and they could do whatever they wanted to do up there: drink for free, eat lobster steak, go in the woods, go upstairs, whatever. It was a free for all. You saw the series Secrets of
Definitely.
Playboy.
Absolutely. I watched it religiously.
And when Jim Brown beat up that woman and broke her, he was back the next day. He was back the next day.
Yikes.
So there was a lot of shady stuff going on up at that mansion.
But with Hugh being in on it, like, how does that make you feel? Because technically he was your boss, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, he's a
So,
depraved. He's a depraved person. There's no soul. He has no soul.
mhm.
A lot of the centerfolds, people don't know this, but a lot of the centerfolds, their photographs were taken when they were 16 and 17 years old, and they weren't put out in the magazine until the day that they turned 18.
Look at
What
that.
does that tell you?
That
These
says a
little
lot.
girls, these are little girls.
Right.
These are teenagers.
Right. So they just held on to the pictures.
Held on to the pictures until they were legally 18, and then they exploited them.
Wow.
Oh, it was a whole cult. It was a cult.
Right.
Well, it was definitely a cult.
And that's why it's Secrets of Playboy, because it wasn't just one person. It was
Oh my God, yes.
like you said, a cult.
It was a cult.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, when I came out on Secrets of Playboy, I was threatened. I'm a liar. You should die. Death threats. And the majority, are you ready for this? The majority of the horrific assaults were by Playboy bunnies against me.
No.
Swear to God.
Of all things.
Of all things. They had 15 minutes of fame 50 years ago. Not one single bunny said, "I'm sorry you were raped, PJ." It was all about, why did you just call us waitresses? They edited Secrets of Playboy was so heavily edited. I mean, a Playboy bunny is a young, beautiful girl with a nice figure, a great personality,
Absolutely.
and they had a celebrity status, but they cut that out. And so these bunnies came after me. They went to the New York Post and they said I was a piece of shit. I mean, horrible things. My friends stood by me, people
Right.
that knew me,
Because you were one of them.
and one of their bosses. I was the only bunny
Exactly.
mother that worked six clubs.
So if you're saying, let's say if you're quote unquote downplaying a bunny, you're downplaying yourself. So why would they
Right.
think that you would be speaking negatively about them?
I can't speak for them. I just know I can't speak for them. They're worried about being called a waitress when I explained in detail what a bunny was
I
in one of the
remember
other
that.
episodes.
I remember that. And you were speaking about the attire and, the reason for it and things like that. I didn't get the impression that you spoke negatively about
Not at
bunny.
all. I'll tell you, to be honest with you, Jennifer, working as a bunny for Playboy was the best time of my life. I was just coming off a brutal marriage. I was a young girl, and I had the best time of my life, meeting celebrities, going out with my friends. I mean, we moved off campus and had our own house. We had a wonderful time. I'm still friends with these girls
Hmm.
50 years later.
Right. So I just didn't get that impression as a viewer. So maybe them being a bunny, they viewed it differently. And that's okay because we all have our own opinions.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't get that impression as a viewer.
I
I
popped their bubble. I popped their bubble. That's what
maybe that was it.
they want. I mean, 50 years later, they want to be known as a Playboy bunny. They still use their name, bunny whatever. didn't you ever do anything in your life other than work as a Playboy Bunny?
Yeah,
I've
50
had
years
an
later.
I've had an illustrious career. I had a great career after Playboy. Are you kidding?
Exactly. You have to have done something in the past 50 years that amounts to more than just that.
Right,
I would
right.
hope. I
Well,
would
that was
hope.
the only thing that was their only claim to fame, you see?
Obviously. And there's nothing wrong with being a Playboy bunny, but you have to do more than that.
Yeah, yeah, that's a stepping stone.
Absolutely.
We had tuition reimbursement. We went to school. It's a
Absolutely.
stepping stone.
Absolutely. And I feel like any job, unless you make it a career, because like you say, you were trying to climb the corporate ladder. And that's
Mhm.
okay. So if you were trying to be a bunny and then a house mother and anything else in that company that you could be, then that's great. But not to stay a bunny for 50 years.
I mean, they're still using that. They're still having conventions with ears. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. But when I worked in Chicago, we moved the club from Michigan Avenue to Lincoln Park.
Okay.
All right. And it was a big brouhaha, and they brought in this Austrian general manager. A, he never worked in a nightclub. B, he didn't know what Playboy was. And C, he was a sexual deviant,
Ah.
horrible man.
Okay.
And he would say nasty things to the ladies, and they would come and talk to me. And finally, after a year of listening to all of these complaints, I had a bunny meeting, just the
Okay.
girl.
Yeah.
And it showed up in the Secrets of Playboy, and what he was doing to all of the ladies. He would say to me, "Why are you wearing a bra, PJ? Why won't you go out with me? You should do this. You should wear tighter clothes." And then he would go up to the ladies and say, "Did you get any last night?" Oh, it's just horrible things. And the thing is, I have those notes. I had them for the Secrets of Playboy, and every single woman signed them, and they all turned their back. They all signed the papers and they turned their back. And so what happened was, um, I called my boss, Harriet Bassler, who I didn't have a good relationship because she's the one that told me to shut my mouth.
Okay.
Um, and I said, I have to talk to you. And she came down to my office. I showed her the notes. I said, this is what's going on in Lincoln Park and yada, yada, yada.
Right.
2 days later, I was told that I was being shipped off to Great Gorge. They kept him
And got
and
rid of you because you were
moved.
leading the charge against the
Yep.
wrongdoings that were going on there.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
were the whistleblower
I
and
was the whistleblower.
they were going to get rid of you.
And, I tried to ask the general manager, the club closes at 2 o'clock in the morning. When these girls are leaving, they have cash in their pocketbooks. Can we had somebody walk these ladies out to their cars, because we had
Absolutely.
key holders that were weird, a lot of instances that happened with key holders.
Yeah.
Can we have the bartenders walk the ladies out? And the general manager refused. They're big girls. They can take care of themselves. I
Wow.
fought for them. I fought for them.
And then they think that you're your back
Yeah,
on them.
it is what it is. I don't understand it, but
Now, we know you're trying to get the statute of limitations to not expire for a rape. How can
Mhm.
people join you on your mission?
Well, in a couple of months, something is going to come out. They can definitely contact me through my email, Pj Masten, Masten at yahoo.com. And be an advocate for women. I mean, there's going to be some big things happening in a couple of months that I really can't talk about now because I have attorneys and such. But we have to support women and children and men and boys, because it happens to all of us.
Absolutely.
And the statute of limitations is an archaic law. Get rid of it. It's a death sentence for anybody that is raped.
Now, something that I always like to do with the criminal justice podcast is talk to people about what they can do if they find themselves in a similar situation. We know you had the unfortunate situation of being raped. What can somebody else do if they find themselves in a similar situation? What tips would you give them?
The first thing to do is call the police. You have to. You have to have the evidence. And yeah, it's not fun going through a rape kit and all that other stuff, but you have to have it's DNA now. It's a good thing.
Mhm.
So yes, call the police. And then the next thing I would definitely say is get therapy immediately, and get therapy with a female, not a male. Make sure it's a female, because they have a different understanding than a man would. And I've had my therapist I have now is 22 years. I've had her. I've been in
Wow.
therapy. Since this rape, I've never had a real relationship with a man. I just don't trust them. I can't let my guard down.
Mhm.
So I've been in therapy for years, and I had two male therapists. And one male therapist in New York City said to me, "Do I sexually turn you on?"
What?
I couldn't believe it. That's why I'm saying, please get a female therapist.
What?
Yes,
I would have
yes,
left right then and there.
I did. I got up and I walked out.
Yikes. Okay.
Yep.
Well, I would like to let the viewers know if they find themselves in the same or similar situation, because you were asked to go like to the hotel room. Of course, in your situation, you were drugged. I would say, if they can get that evidence, because you know that you had the glass.
Mhm.
If they can get that evidence, that's something additional that they can get and give to the
Absolutely.
police, because we
Absolutely.
don't think about it until like later, but it
Right.
can still be there. So
Right.
if we put that type of thinking in the person's mind, man or woman, if you suspect you were drugged, if you think you were drugged, get that evidence, get that glass, because that's evidence that can be analyzed. You can kind of see, what did they give you? Was it a roofie? What was it?
It
Was it
was liquid. What he gave me was liquid, so I have no idea what it was. No
exactly?
idea.
But maybe the police could analyze that glass
Right.
and figure it out. And guess what? That's evidence too that can be used against that person. So that
That's right.
kind of things, those are the types of things I like to give my viewers as tips, just in case they find themselves in an unfortunate situation like that. Because you just never know.
You
You
never
don't
know.
go out and think, oh, this is going to happen to me. But if you have those types of tips in your mind already, you can kind of, just what do I do in this situation? If you panic, hey, I remember so and so said that. And now they can just, think about it and kind of be a little bit more prepared than if they didn't know what to do at all.
Well, when I do my speaking engagements to women and young girls, I always tell them, if you're staying in a hotel, don't get a room next to the elevator. Do not get a room next to the elevator. Somebody can swoop right into your room real easily. And things to be cautious of. When you're walking to your car, have your keys in your hand and look behind you. And if there's a van around, don't get in your car.
That is
Don't.
so good to know. That is so good to note, because it happens. It
All
happens.
the time, every
It
day,
happens. Yeah.
every day.
And I feel like there's like more predators out now because it's so easy. People are like more accessible. People are distracted by their
Well,
phone.
human trafficking.
Exactly.
Now these what do they call those strips that they tie,
Oh, zip ties.
zip ties? They put them on the back door of a car to
Hmm.
let the predators know that it's a single female, easy to
Hmm.
take over.
Yep.
So if you see a zip tied on the
Forget
handle of your
about it.
car, run,
Yeah.
run, and
Yeah.
call the police.
But this is good information. This is
Hmm.
what I like to share with the listeners. If
Hmm.
you are privy to this stuff in advance, you can try and not be a victim.
And when you're out having a cocktail, please keep your hand over the top of that glass. Do not put that glass down, and hold that beer bottle if you're drinking beer, whatever it is. Do not put that glass down
I couldn't agree
anywhere.
more. I could not agree more. I see the movies. I don't see it in
Mhm.
person. I see the movies all the time.
Yeah,
They put the glass down and they go to the dance floor. I'm like, don't do it.
yeah,
Don't
yeah.
do it. And guess
No,
what? If you do it, don't drink it. Just get
Don't
another one.
drink it.
Just get another one. It's okay. You
That's
walked
right.
away. Guess what? You forgot. Just get
Right.
another one. Just
Knock it over.
buy
Knock
another
We
one.
tell them knock it over, so you have to get a new one.
Just get another one. Just
Mhm.
start over. It's okay. Just get a new one because it
And
happens.
move away from that crowd.
Absolutely. Because
Mhm.
nobody's perfect. That's why I said if you forgot, you went to the dance floor, you went to the bathroom, oh shoot, I left my drink. Just get another one. It's okay. Because it happens oh so often. You don't know what was happening while you were gone.
Human trafficking is so horrendous right now.
hmm
It's always been, but now it's out in the open. I mean, look at how many Native American young women are missing.
They're missing.
Hundreds
They're
missing,
missing.
but the cops don't do anything because they're Native Americans.
Yep. Yeah.
They have their own laws, they say.
It happens more and more every day.
And
And
these
what
poor
can we
people
do
coming
about
from
it?
and these poor people that are coming from, down on the border of Texas, there's a lot of young girls and children that are being stolen
Yeah.
and brought in.
Undocumented too. So you can't even look for them.
Can't look for
You
them.
cannot look for these young girls. It's so sad. But this
So
is why I like to share this type of information, this helpful information is so necessary in today's
Mhm.
society.
Yeah, and always walk in twos. Don't be
Always.
alone. Don't be alone.
Yep.
You're easy prey when you're alone.
Always. And I always, when I'm out with my friends, it's normally two of us or maybe
Yeah,
more. I always say, let me drive you to your car. Let me,
exactly.
they be like, oh, I'll walk. I'm like, no, let me drive you to your car. I'll do
Yeah,
it. It's two cars down. Nope. I'm gonna drive you over there. Cause you
yeah.
just never know. You can get snatched that fast.
Well, and for the young girls that hang out at the malls, if you see somebody following you, go into the closest store, go right up to the cash register, ask for the manager, and have
Absolutely.
call security immediately,
Yep.
immediately, and they will walk you out to your car and lock the door, and you get out of there.
And you report it to the police because then they'll have surveillance cameras and they can pull that footage and you can do a whole report and then they could be on the
Absolutely,
lookout for that person too.
exactly,
This
exactly.
is this is stuff that can occur in any place at any time, but you need to do something and say something. You see something, you say something.
It's a predator's world.
hmm And it's
Sad.
because people are scared. They don't think it's a big deal, but it is a big deal. When you don't say something, you leave the next person to be a victim.
And what I have to really emphasize is when you're raped, it's just not one time and you forget about it. It
Mhm.
stays with you forever. It's in your DNA, that act of violence. It's power and violence. It has to come out.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And PJ, I just want to thank you so, so very much for being my guest today. I could not have done this without you. You and your advocacy is something that I stand on. I stand with you. I stand in solidarity, and I'm here to support you in any way that I can.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure meeting
Thank
you and speaking with you. A pleasure.
I appreciate you so very much. And I want to thank you all for listening to Criminal Justice Corner podcast. You can find us on Instagram at Criminal Justice Corner, and you can find me on at Dr. Jennifer Matthews on Instagram. And I look forward to seeing you guys soon at the next episode. New episodes are posted every Wednesday. Thank you for listening.